thing every single day. I'm a single parent of 2 teenagers. And one of the things that focusing does for me is it helps me to come back to just a quiet, calm place within myself where I can be grounded in what my intentions are for parenting.
And have you taught your teenagers focusing yet?
Well, there's a whole separate discipline for focusing with children, and it has to do with there are individuals who specialize, for instance, in focusing with infants, so pre-verbal. And then there's sort of a whole series of disciplines for that. So have I trained my children? No. Teaching teenagers focusing, I work with them in a focusing fashion all the time. I encourage them to develop that connection. But is it the same as like working with them the way I would with yoga, for instance? Like this is how you do the pose and lift your back leg a little bit more? No, I don't work with them in that way. Because for me, working with young people, the point is that hopefully we haven't led them so far away from what's organic in them. And that what I really need to do is to listen and
set an example. Be the role model.
To be the role model by listening to myself, but also to understand that their way of listening to themselves might be different than mine. And so I need to be very sensitive to how they are doing that and to really affirm it and support it.
Can you define focusing for our audience?
Well, a definition of focusing would be simply being able to be in touch with, to connect with, listen to, and receive information from your whole body's knowing. Your whole body's knowing.
And I would also add to be able to change the feelings in your body and the biochemistry through focusing.
Well, actually that's not really one of the goals of focusing.
I would think it would accomplish that.
It does. But one of the most valuable principles that I think was most eloquently articulated by the teacher that certified me, Ann Weiser Cornell, in interrelationship focusing, is that in order to truly connect with what's wise inside of you, you need a complete and radical acceptance. So for instance, in my life, I have any number of challenges, including allopathic disease. And would I like it to be different? Yeah. Does it create challenges and obstacles in my life? Yeah. Does it take away some of the things that I used to enjoy? Yeah. If I put my awareness, it's pretty much the same principle that you use in the law of attraction. If I put my awareness on changing it, then I'm creating resistance. And I'm not as likely to be able to hear what my inner knowing wants to elevate.
Well, where I'm talking about the changes, once you know and understand your inner knowing and you follow through on your inner knowing, it relieves the stress, the tension.
Absolutely.
So the shift comes.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's how you know that you followed your inner knowing, is you experienced the shift.
Yes, and
that doesn't have to be the goal.
Well,
but it's the outcome.
And there's different levels of change. So possibly I might even have misunderstood your question slightly, because and I continue to study all different. Even though I'm certified with the Focusing Institute, I continue to study all different methods. And there's a method that I'm studying right now that's called macro shifting. So that word that you just used, shift, that's a key word in focusing.
And what is a macro shift?
So let me back up just a little bit.
Okay.
Let's start with what's a shift. Well, okay.
Okay.
So focusing is about connecting with your inner knowing.
Yeah.
And as you do that, it's a bodily held knowing. It's not necessarily articulate. But when we open the channel, then some articulate and intelligent cognitive things can come. And that process, that experience in the body is felt as a shift, a felt shift. Okay, so that's one of the earmarks of a focusing session, is that something will you will become in touch with something, and that at some point in time as your relationship with it develops in either that session or maybe a series of sessions, you may experience a shift.
And I think Gene used the term a felt sense.
Felt sense.
Yeah.
So that's the term for what we're feeling in the body.
Yeah.
It's something, and it's a challenge in the focusing world to talk about the body, because when people talk about body work, they're thinking about massage, they're thinking about Reiki, they're thinking about all kinds of hands-on things. And focusing, in my view, is very much body work, but we don't touch each other. What we do is we learn how to navigate internally. So for instance, if I'm working with you as a client, I'm never going to touch you, and you're doing the internal touching, you're doing the internal work, and I'm sitting here as a guide helping you with the container, so that if you're having difficulty getting in touch with something that has to do with, well, why can't I just do this one thing? I really want to do this, I want to write this book. And I know I have the chapter outline, I have the first chapter written, I have the second chapter written, and that's as far as I can go. Why can't I write this book?
Mm-hmm.
So something is stuck. Something's stuck inside. And there's going to be an inner knowing around it, and there's even an inner process that's what's sticking you. There's something inside that's not ready to move about chapter 3 or about the book in total. And so as a focusing guide, as someone who trains or is certified, then I sit with you and I help you to stay within the container of acceptance for whatever you're finding in there.
How long does a focusing session last? Is there?
It's really, I mean, for instance, you asked about focusing with my children.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really microbursts.
Yeah.
But as a paid focusing professional.
And by the way, those microbursts can be very, very
huge.
Powerful
can
and
be really huge.
transformative.
Right. Just the tiniest moment.
And it can shift the whole energy between parent and child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the toughest things for parents, I think, is to understand that when you deliver that microburst and you see this look on your child's face, like they don't quite get it, something's changing, that actually is the shift, and that the kids are actually going to come back and try to create comfort by trying to recreate the old situation. It doesn't mean the shift hasn't happened. You got to stick with it. You got to stay with it and just keep delivering that microburst, keep delivering that microburst until the pattern changes. Because kids are all about creating safety. They want to survive.
Is that the macro shift we're talking about?
No, the macro shift. So in this method that I'm at the moment trying to learn, this practitioner calls the shift that we've been talking about, something that you might experience in a session, like a micro shift, something that just helps you with that chapter. But what if you're the type of person who all your life you've wanted to be a writer? You have in the closet 15,
I'm the wrong guy to use
You're
that
the wrong guy.
Yeah,
okay,
I've got
give me
4
one.
books.
Give me one that would work for you. What have you wanted to do all your life that you haven't done?
Well, I'm running for mayor of Chicago now, so I haven't held political office yet.
You've never held political office, but you're running, so that means you're not really blocked. You're trying.
That's right.
So
I'm running against the Chicago machine. Good luck.
Good luck.
A lot of focusing every day, multiple times a day.
Okay.
No, we don't have to.
How about this example?
Yeah.
I think it's an example that everybody can relate to, because whether you have a child or you've been a child, everybody knows child. We were all a child once. So somewhere along the line, maybe you learned to ride a bike. And maybe you learned to ride a bike with training wheels. That might have been the first step. So what was the goal of training wheels? The goal of training wheels was to increase your confidence and to help you keep your balance by creating more stability, so that you have 3 wheels in the back versus just 2 wheels, 1 and 2. As you progress in your confidence and your skill, one thing that might happen is that the training wheels might be raised so that they're not in direct contact, so that you have to have that experience of keeping balance, but you still have a container so that if you tip, you don't fall all the way over. So now you're learning about